so glad you can join us. Here's what's happening this Wednesday. Canada signs on to a massive new NATO defense spending target.
We're protecting Canadians against new threats.
Defending an ambitious commitment that will cost Canadians.
Canada has been a prime place for these people.
Investigating Iranian terror cells on Canadian soil.
It's a wall of heat and stench that hits you.
Plus, a suspended sentence for one of Canada's oldest prisons, rat-infested and rotting.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Well, the Prime Minister is winging his way back to Ottawa from the Netherlands after making a major commitment to boost Canada's contribution to NATO. Mark Carney has agreed that Canada will almost double military defense spending to 5% of GDP, putting this country in line with 31 other NATO members, something that put a big smile on Donald Trump's face, the driving force behind this big development. CTV's Jeremy Sharon is in The Hague.
A highly anticipated historic sit-down for the NATO alliance started today with a clear message from Secretary General Mark Rutte.
For too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment. And that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible.
That has been Donald Trump's pitch as he drove the charge to increase the alliance's defense spending pledge.
NATO is going to become very strong with us.
Alliance members making official today what was expected, a new baseline spending target of 5% of GDP to be reached by 2035.
This is a significant commitment in response to significant threats to our security.
The fact that we are doing this today, the fact that we're united, the fact that the United States is fully behind this, the fact that we're working together is going to reduce the threat environment 10 years from now.
3.5% will have to go to core defense spending, with a requirement to spend another 1.5% on defense-related infrastructure investments. Carney says meeting the 5% commitment would mean earmarking $150 billion a year for defense.
So yes, we'll find gaps. We'll be transparent about that. We'll make up those gaps. So the overall context of the net increase in defense spending is much less than the headline from 2 to 5.
But key to today's new pledge from the alliance, a plan to review progress in 2029, ensuring it still meets the needs of the global security landscape. Senior government officials tell us they see an opportunity then to address whether the breakdown of 3.5 and 1.5 could be balanced differently, a change they say could be better for Canada.
Right.
Sandy?
Okay, Jeremy, thank you. So how will Canada pay to raise defense spending this much, and what programs will need to be cut? Well, the Prime Minister was asked this today, and here's some of what he said.
If we are moving to the higher and higher levels of defense spending because that's necessary, then we will have to make considerations about what less the federal government can do in certain cases and how we're going to pay for it.
Carney says many of those decisions will be made towards the end of the decade when the global security situation may be clear. The Conservatives say they will be watching closely.
To what extent?
Well, this is why we needed a budget. We need to know where this money's coming from. Canadians deserve to know the truth. Those that serve and the Canadian Armed Forces need to have the direction that a budget provides in developing their departmental plans.
The Prime Minister chose not to issue a budget after being elected and will present one in the fall instead. Well, some chatter today that forced NATO's Secretary General to explain his choice of words during a meeting with Donald Trump on the Israel-Iran conflict.
They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easy to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
Yes, in that analogy, Mark Rutte appeared to call Donald Trump Daddy, which he tried to explain later in an interview.
The daddy thing, I didn't call him daddy. What I said is that sometimes in Europe, I hear sometimes countries saying, hey, Mark, will the US stay with us? And I said, that sounds a little bit like a small child asking his daddy, hey, are you still staying with the family? So in that sense, I use daddy, not that I was calling President Trump daddy.
Trump says that he and Rutte get along and that he took it as a term of affection. At the NATO summit, Donald Trump also said that U.S. and Iranian officials will hold talks next week, and he again pushed back on a leaked U.S. intelligence report suggesting the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities may have only set the country back by a few months.
Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated, and we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out.
The UN nuclear watchdog says it expects that damage at Iran's underground Fordo facility is very significant, but can't know for sure. Iran says it will not give up its nuclear program, although the ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding today. Well, some Canadians caught in the region unable to get out because of airspace restrictions are now home or on their way home. CTV's Heather Wright now on the journey to safety for some, efforts to get out for others. Hi, Heather.
Well, Sandy, airspace in both countries has reopened, but flights are limited and it remains a challenge to leave.
On Canadian soil after a 21-hour journey home. Tim Payne and Brandon Lucchese landed in Toronto this morning. The Canadian hockey players had arrived in Israel shortly before the war with Iran began.
It was unexpected, it was scary. It was a lot. I thought we were going to be stuck there, so happy to be back home. Yeah.
Like many Canadians leaving the region, the two traveled to nearby Jordan and flew back through the capital, Amman. While Israel's main airport in Tel Aviv is back to normal operations, airspace in both Israel and Iran had been closed for nearly 2 weeks, which further complicated efforts to get Canadians out. Some have called Ottawa's response inadequate, but Canada's former ambassador to Israel says the criticism is unfair.
You have traveled, you got caught up in a difficult circumstance. The government should do everything possible to get you out of the danger zone if they can, but there's no obligation, nor should there be an obligation for the government of Canada to be paying for people to fly home.
Global Affairs Canada says they have helped more than 600 Canadians leave the region, while many others have left on their own. And while Tuesday's ceasefire has brought some stability to the area, there is still worry.
It's frustrating, it's stressful.
Bahar Motamedian's 72-year-old father is in Iran, and she's trying to get him to Canada. She is a citizen, but he is not. She's hoping this war will encourage the government to speed up efforts to reunite families.
I know that Canada always says things that, okay, we want to reunite families. I think that this is the best time that Canada can show that strong leadership and help us bring our families here.
With this fragile ceasefire holding, both Iran and Israel are turning now to recovery. According to Iran, the 12-day war killed more than 600 people. In Israel, the death toll is nearly 30. Sandy.
CTV's Heather Wright. It might be challenging for some Canadians to get home, but it appears some suspected senior Iranian officials got into this country easily enough, something the Canada Border Services Agency is now looking into. CTV's Judy Trin is on this file, and Judy, what have you learned?
Sandy, the Canada Border Services Agency has stepped up its investigations since the government declared the IRGC a terror organization 1 year ago. Israel has assassinated top commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Now there are concerns in Canada. Officials with the IRGC who have promoted transnational violence will flee here. Mojdeh Shariari is with the advocacy group Report IRGC.
People don't want to face justice and will try to escape from Iran and establish themselves elsewhere. And Canada has been a prime place.
Canada declared the IRGC a terror organization in June 2024. Since then, the Canada Border Services Agency has launched 115 investigations. Of those, 49 cases were determined not to have links with the Iranian regime, but 66 cases have yet to be determined. So far, 20 people suspected of being senior IRGC officials have been reported inadmissible, while 131 Iranian visas have been cancelled.
Then the numbers that has been reported would look very low.
Shariari says her group has 91 files on people living in Canada who carried out orders for Iran's terrorist regime that it has passed on to the RCMP, CSIS, and border officials. But security experts say there has to be due diligence.
People don't arrive in Canada with a stamp on their forehead saying, I am a spy, or I am a former Iranian official and I tortured people. So do you know that? How do you know that information? You don't necessarily know it. It may take investigation to actually determine whether the individual is who he says they are.
Some advocates are calling for more than just deportation. They want the government to consider laying charges under Canada's foreign interference and terrorism laws. Sandy.
Judy Trin, thank you. A scary moment in Canada's Red Chamber today. Senator Patrick Brazeau from Quebec rose to speak and then he collapsed.
Thank you very much. And
a Senate spokesperson says Brazeau had a medical incident. He was examined by paramedics and appeared to be recovering. The oppressive heat wave that enveloped parts of Ontario and Quebec for days is now hanging over Nova Scotia, causing officials to warn about an increased wildfire risk in the area. Temperatures were expected to hit 30 degrees, although it felt closer to 35 with the humidex, and that is slightly cooler than yesterday. Now in the West, new cases of measles are leading to new concerns now that the school year is pretty much over. Health officials in BC and Alberta are issuing warnings, urging the public to get their shots. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson is here. And Andrew, why might summer present a higher risk?
Sandy, after this week, school is out for summer, and health officials are bracing for a surge of new measles cases as families hit the road and potentially fuel new spread between communities. There are 17 new cases this week in BC, substantial growth in a province that has only seen a few dozen in 2025. Alberta started the week announcing 15 new cases in just 24 hours. Exposure warnings from the BC Centre for Disease Control are already pointing to travel being a factor, with people who recently sailed on ferries between Metro Vancouver and Victoria being asked to watch for symptoms. Infectious disease experts can't believe what they're seeing.
This is astounding. This breaks my heart. As far back as the turn of the century, we had declared measles as eliminated in Canada, controlled in terms of local transmission. Vaccination rates have decreased in the province of British Columbia from 90% as recently as 5 or 6 years ago down to 70% and 50% or less in some parts of the province. That's what's driving this.
Every infection in BC and close to 90% in Alberta have been in unvaccinated people. Children are typically immunized with 2 doses by the age of 6. People who haven't gotten their shot are urged to get it at a pharmacy or clinic. Measles can be tricky because early symptoms are often mistaken for a cold, including a cough, runny nose, or red eyes. By the time the more obvious rash sets in, many others may have already been exposed to the virus. Sandy.
Andrew, thank you. Coming up after the break, a report card on cell phone bans in schools.
I don't even think about reaching for my phone.
We ask, did they make the grade? Ask any high school teacher or student, and they'll tell you the struggle to keep cell phones out of sight in class is real. A patchwork of bans exists across the country. In Ontario, the decision to outlaw cell phones was met with mixed reviews. So we sent CTV Scott Lightfoot to check out the scene in Toronto as students get ready for summer.
It is the last day of school at Humberside Collegiate Institute, and as students sign yearbooks before starting their summer, they're reflecting on their first year without having their cell phones in the classroom.
It was definitely a change because since grade 9, we've been using our phones a lot for school, even when we're not supposed to.
Starting last September, students across the province were prohibited from using their phones during class time. Inside this school, there is signage with clear direction, holders for phones in some of the classrooms, and locked charging stations in the hallway, an effort to keep the kids' attention on the subject being taught.
For the first few months, it was pretty difficult adjusting to it, but then I got pretty adjusted to it, and I actually really enjoy it now.
I mean, in all honesty, we all rely on our phones, so I guess it was a pretty big change at the beginning, but I kind of got adjusted to it, and now I don't even think about reaching for my phone during classes. I'm kind of used to it.
Well, we knew it was a culture shift for everyone.
Claudine Terrell is the school's principal. She says staff noticed students were more focused during class. She also says they noticed a behavioral shift because the new rules also blocked sites like Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram from school Wi-Fi.
We saw definitely a decrease in incidences that apply to social media. So last year we had a lot of online cyberbullying. We had a lot of incidences where people were putting things on social media that were inappropriate, and that was reduced drastically this year.
High school students can still access their phones during breaks and outside of class time, and if they use their own data, they can still access social media. But some students say they feel the restrictions change their school experience for the better.
Social media is a huge part of our lives, and teenagers especially. So knowing that we kind of have to take a step away from that, I also think it's important for students to kind of interact in person, not only on social media. So I do think it's beneficial.
When the students return in the fall, the rules will remain in place. But as for whether they will spend less time on their phones this summer, having seen that it's possible.
Honestly, no. I would like to say yes, but it's a no.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News, Toronto.
All right, well, what is a yes, definitely, is the list of outstanding Canadians who are recognized today with an appointment to the Order of Canada.
Even now, getting emotional, it's not easy telling my story over and over, but I know it's teaching a lot of people about what happened to us and about the Indian residential schools in Canada.
That was Orange Shirt Day founder Phyllis Webstad, recognized for her work helping Canadians understand the impact of the residential school system. Also honored Raptors superfan Nav Bhatia for his work helping low-income communities, as well as Argos legend Mike Pinball Clemens and his wife Diane for their extensive charity work. And CTV National News will be right back. A narrow escape for passengers of a transit bus that caught fire in the Toronto area. Firefighters, as you could see, doused the back of the bus after flames broke up. There were 6 people on board. Everyone, we are told, got out safely. No word yet on what may have caused the fire, but police say it is not considered suspicious. Now, one of the oldest, largest, and most notorious prisons in the country is about to be relegated to the history books. Her Majesty's Penitentiary in St. John's is decrepit and said to be overrun by rats. But plans to replace the Victoria-era institution have run into a snag, as CTV's Garrett Barry explains.
After decades of debate, this bucket is the closest thing to a new provincial prison complex in St. John's that we've seen so far.
Despite the inflated price tag and challenge, I call it, we remain steadfast in our commitment to getting the project done.
Set to replace a decrepit Her Majesty's Penitentiary where staff have complained about rodent infestations, mold, odors, extreme heat, and regular lockdowns.
When you walk in the summertime in particular, it's a wall of heat and stench that hits you.
Conditions so bad inside, multiple offenders have received additional time credited against their sentences for living through it. Defense attorney Aaron Breen says tensions are boiling inside and it's near impossible to leave the prison in a better state than when you entered.
Physically and mentally, it is an excruciating, almost torturous ordeal in terms of the conditions, the air quality, the heat, the temperature.
So the question isn't why this prison is being replaced, it's why it's taking so long. The last attempt to replace this prison stalled when costs came in well over estimates. Officials blamed inflation then and now, and the price of this project has continued to climb. The current design in this area is set to cost almost $700 million, mostly borne by the provincial government, but with the $150 million to be kicked in by Ottawa.
It has always been a difficult priority politically. It is a hard sell for a lot of people, and quite frankly, that doesn't make it any the less important.
The full and final contract to build this new prison still hasn't been signed, and there is no firm commitment on when prisoners might start to be transferred. Breen says until the new facility is well underway, it's hard to trust that the project will be complete. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
After the break, Canada's smallest province decks up for a prince who shares its name. A royal is making his way to Canada from the UK. Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh and 16th in line to the throne, will be back in Prince Edward Island for the first time in a decade. His visit coming 1 month after his big brother read the speech from the throne. Today, we welcome Maria Saru to Charlottetown and to the CTV National News family. And Maria, why is the prince paying a visit?
Sandy, Prince Edward's return this week marks a continued tie to the troops. He's the PEI regiment's colonel-in-chief, here to celebrate its 150th anniversary. But for people here on the island, the conversation isn't just about tradition. It's about relevance.
You know, it's always nice when they come and sort of show that they respect the province.
I'm not in favor of the monarchy at all. I would be happy for it to go away.
They don't do it any good. Costs money.
I think it's going to draw in a lot of attention to Charlottetown, and I think that's going to be good for us.
If it was Prince William, I might be more excited.
Just last month, King Charles and Queen Camilla were in Ottawa for the speech from the throne, a symbolic moment with a message that Canada will not be the 51st state. An Ipsos survey in May found 66% of Canadians say the monarchy is helpful as a way to distinguish Canada from the U.S.
And royal experts say the support and significance has increased with threats coming from Canada's nearest neighbor.
And these visits remind Donald Trump, the king visiting and doing that state visit and doing the speech from the throne reminds President Donald Trump and everybody around the world that Canada is a sovereign state.
In PEI, the Duke of Edinburgh's schedule includes a forum with representatives from all 4 maritime provinces, a visit to Abequit First Nation, along with an event with some young people from the island. It ends with a regimental ball and a parade through Charlottetown. After that, Prince Edward heads to Toronto, then Ottawa for Canada Day. Sandy?
All right, Maria, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up. And later, Omar at 11. See you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.